Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something really fundamental. Time itself. It's that constant companion we all experience, something we try to manage and, well, often feel totally controlled by. Sound familiar?
Yeah, that feeling of racing against the clock.
Exactly. So this isn't about quick tips to squeeze more into your day. Instead, we're going to explore what time is, sort of at its core, how humans have made sense of it through history, and how our current relationship with it has evolved.
Right. We've gathered some fascinating reflections and research around this whole idea of time management. And our goal, like always, is to go beyond the surface, pull out the really insightful ideas, and understand the deeper forces shaping how we experience it.
So it's like building a fundamental understanding, not just another list of productivity hacks.
Exactly. Those hacks might work for a week, maybe, but this is deeper.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start. What is time, fundamentally? We use the word constantly, but what's the, bedrock definition?
Well, in its most basic sense, as our sources point out, time is how we measure change. If absolutely nothing ever shifted or transformed,
Hmm.
we wouldn't even need the concept.
Right.
It's the movement, the unfolding of events that makes a framework like time, necessary.
That makes perfect sense. But it feels like time has this dual nature. On one hand, it's so concrete, the numbers on our watches, the dates. But on the other hand, it feels incredibly fluid, kind of personal. Is it both?
Absolutely. That duality is key.
Mm.
Time as a human construct is, well, undeniable. Clocks, calendars, hours, minutes. These are all inventions, tools we've created to track and organize things.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how differently cultures have done this. Lunar calendars versus solar, different starting points for counting the hours. It really shows how subjective these systems are.
Right. It's not like we found the 24-hour day etched on some cosmic tablet or something.
Precisely. But time isn't just an idea in our heads. Physics tells us it's woven into the very fabric of the universe.
Space-time.
Exactly. Einstein's theory of relativity links time with space, this four-dimensional thing called space-time. And what's wild is that time isn't absolute. It can actually speed up or slow down depending on gravity and motion.
Like the astronauts on the ISS?
Yeah, exactly. They age just a tiny bit slower than us here on Earth. It makes the relativity of time kind of tangible, doesn't it?
Wow, okay. Space-time. My brain does a little knot trying to picture that. So we have these human-made systems for measuring something that's also this fundamental, cosmic, and even relative thing. How do those two realities intersect when we talk about, managing our time day to day?
Well, that's really the core of it, isn't it? Time management is basically about navigating our subjective experience of time, how long something feels within the often rigid structure of an objective system, like the 24-hour day or packed schedules.
Those deadlines that just won't budge.
Exactly. So good time management, you could say, is really about bridging that gap between what time is and how we actually live it, perceive it.
Okay, so before all these precise tools, clocks, calendars with their tiny boxes, how did people even experience time? It must have been so different.
Oh, a completely different landscape. Time back then was largely relative, deeply tied to the natural world, and often very relational. People measured time by the obvious stuff. The sun moving across the sky.
Moon cycles.
Yep, moon cycles. The changing seasons dictating planting and harvest. Even subtle things like the first bird song or the tides.
It sounds so much more integrated, less separate from life itself.
Exactly. Our sources have these great examples, like a farmer saying, we'll meet when the sun is like 3 fingers above the horizon, or the gathering is 5 sleeps after the full moon.
Huh.
Think about the flexibility in that. It relies on shared observation, natural rhythms. It's a world away from our days, broken down into tiny, precise units. Time was, well, fluid, not these little boxes.
This makes me think about those different ways of even conceiving of time. I've heard about linear versus cyclical time. What's the core difference there?
Right, these are two really contrasting worldviews. Linear time, which is super dominant in, Western cultures, sees time like a straight arrow, past, present, future,
Yeah.
always moving forward.
Yeah, progress, deadlines, goals.
Exactly. And our sources suggest this linear view can really feed into our modern productivity obsession, that anxiety about wasting time.
Yeah.
It pushes us forward, often urgently.
That definitely hits home, that constant feeling of needing to be efficient.
Totally. In contrast, cyclical time, found in many indigenous cultures, Eastern philosophies, ancient societies, sees time more like a circle or a spiral.
Okay.
It emphasizes repeating patterns, day-night, seasons, life-death. The focus is more on balance, rhythm, harmony, Events aren't just gone forever, they kind of return in cycles. It reminds us of rhythms and connections.
Can you give some specific examples of that cyclical view?
Sure. Hinduism has these vast repeating cosmic cycles called yugas. The Mayan calendar is another incredibly complex system built on interlocking cycles.
Right, I've heard of them.
And just think about traditional farming societies. Their whole life revolves around planting and harvest cycles. Their sense of time is naturally more cyclical than, say, someone driven by quarterly reports.
So were there, like, advantages to living by those more natural rhythms, it sounds? Less stressful, maybe?
There were definitely benefits. Maybe more presence, stronger community connection, less pressure from trying to micro-schedule everything. But, clocks and precise timekeeping brought huge advantages, too.
Like what?
Synchronization across distances became possible, crucial for trade, navigation, transport. Standardized labor drove industrial growth. And science, of course, relies on accurate timekeeping.
Yeah, true.
It's not really about one being better, but understanding the trade-offs we made.
It's almost impossible now to imagine a world without our modern, segmented view of time. But let's really paint a picture of what our relationship with time looks like today, for many of us.
Right. It often starts with that 7 a.m. phone alarm, doesn't it?
Yeah, not the sun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not our own cues, but a preset schedule. And then it's often just a cascade of blocks. Meetings back to back, deadlines looming, a quick lunch squeezed in.
Kicking up kids at exactly 3.17.
Yeah, maybe a rushed gym session if you're lucky. We're constantly checking digital calendars, productivity apps. Our attention is always split. Time can easily go from being a tool to being this demanding master.
That paints a depressingly accurate picture.
Yeah. With this constant clock watching, we often feel overstimulated, guilty about any perceived wasted time, obsessed with optimizing everything, cramming more in.
Even leisure gets scheduled like, okay, I have exactly 45 minutes to relax.
Totally.
Hmm.
It turns time into this rigid, unforgiving grid that feels like it's ruling us, not serving us.
It's so easy to think this is just how it's always been, but our sources really stress how recent this intense focus on time management actually is.
That's such a critical point. If you go back just a few centuries before the Industrial Revolution really took hold, most people lived by those natural cyclical rhythms.
Right.
Clocks existed, sure, but they were expensive, mostly for the rich or like monasteries needing prayer times. The Industrial Revolution was the big turning point. Factories needed synchronized labor.
So everyone had to be on the same page time-wise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Precise schedules became essential, clocks spread, and this idea of time discipline was imposed on workers.
And then things like railroads cemented it even more, right?
Absolutely. Train schedules needed standard time zones to work across distances. That happened in the mid-1800s and fundamentally changed how whole countries organized time.
Wow.
Then in the 20th century, you get rigid schedules in schools, offices, the classic 9 to 5, and now 21st century. Digital tech pushes it further. Hyperscheduling, the 2047 economy.
Always on.
Always on. So in a relatively short historical window, we've gone from living in time's flow to actively managing it to often feeling like we're managed by it.
That's a huge shift from living in time to being managed by time. Wow.
It's a profound transformation in our relationship with something so basic.
Okay, given this history and the, let's be honest, often negative feelings our modern time obsession causes, are there other ways? Our sources mention this really interesting idea of relational time management. What's that about?
Yeah, this framework tries to shift away from that rigid, purely productivity-driven, often anxiety-inducing approach. It aims for something more human-centered, sustainable, more fulfilling.
Okay, I'm listening.
So a key element is moving from strict schedules towards embracing more natural daily rhythms. Instead of micromanaging every minute, it's about creating a flow. Maybe mornings for focus, afternoons for connection, evenings for rest.
Aligning tasks with energy levels.
Exactly. Working with your energy, not just against the clock, like maybe using a planner focused on intentions, not just deadlines. My mornings are my most creative time, so I'll protect that.
That seems nice, actually doable.
Right. Another core idea is embracing less is more, instead of massive to-do lists that just feel overwhelming.
Which they always do.
It's about consciously picking just 1 to 3 really important priorities for the day or week, focusing on what actually moves the needle.
Letting go of trying to do everything.
Yes. Recognizing that focused progress on what matters is progress. Like one source beautifully put it, I don't have to do it all today. I only need to touch what truly matters.
Oof, that's powerful. We all need to hear that. What else is part of this relational approach?
Redefining success is huge. moving away from perfectionism, having to finish everything, towards just doing meaningful work and respecting our limits. Consistency over constant completion,
Okay.
and crucially, building in breaks and celebration. Pauses aren't wasteful. They're essential, productive even. They let us rest, process, recharge.
And celebration, how does that fit in?
Scheduling small moments to acknowledge what went well. A walk, music, just noting successes. It anchors time to positive feelings, not just tasks done.
I like that. The source example was good. Every Friday evening, write down 3 things I did well. It shifts focus from quantity to quality and feeling.
Exactly. Another part is consciously reconnecting with our own internal clock, trying time-free work blocks, even short ones, to tune back into focus and stillness.
Like just work on something without watching the clock.
Yeah. Or maybe even try living by natural light for one day a week, waking with the sun, resting when tired, reconnecting with that primal pace.
Interesting.
And finally, consciously honoring both social obligations and protecting what's called soul time, unstructured time for rest, play, dreaming, just being.
That soul time really resonates. It feels like the first thing to go when we're overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And our sources also dig into the emotional experience of time, which is crucial. Time isn't just neutral, we feel it.
How so?
Well, emotions warp our perception, right? A joyful hour flies by, a painful minute feels like forever.
Totally.
Anxiety often creates time scarcity, depression can make time feel frozen, but presence, mindfulness can make time feel spacious, even in a busy day. Managing our emotional relationship with time is as vital as managing tasks.
It's fascinating how our internal state warps something we think is objective. This makes me think about the deeper, more philosophical questions about time itself.
Indeed. Philosophers and physicists have pondered this for ages. Our sources touch on it. There's the idea of chronos clock time, linear, measurable,
Okay.
and kairos, qualitative moments of meaning, right timing, opportunity.
Ah, Kairos.
Then you have philosophical views like presentism, only the present is real, versus eternalism, past, present, future, all coexist. And quantum physics even hints time might emerge from something more fundamental.
Whoa. Mind-bending. So what's the practical takeaway from these deeper ideas?
Well, it encourages us to ask, what's the right time for things? What if our linear view is just one way? Maybe time's more like a field we navigate with awareness.
Hmm.
Recognizing this fluidity can help us live more intuitively, be open to those kairos moments that a rigid schedule might miss.
Our sources also connect identity and time. How does who we are affect how we experience time?
Hugely. Our personality, values, even different inner selves relate to time differently. Someone who loves structure versus someone who loves spontaneity, they'll manage time differently, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Morning person versus night owl. And think about those inner selves, the responsible one, the playful one, the creative one. They might perceive time differently too.
Like one feels duty, another feels pressure, another fleeting joy.
Exactly. The sources give examples like Bannock duty, Tommy pressure, Addie fleeting joy, Devon mission clock. Recognizing these different perspectives within us gives insights into our own time styles. Maybe we can let each self guide us when appropriate.
It makes you realize how deeply personal time is. And it's not just individual, right? Society structures time too, often
Right.
unequally.
Absolutely. That's a critical point. How society values time is tied to power and privilege. Wealth can buy free time, letting people outsource tasks, prioritize leisure.
While poverty steals time, multiple jobs, systemic barriers.
Exactly. And what self-care for one person might be judged as laziness for another, depending on the situation. There's also tons of invisible time labor, often done by women and caregivers, that goes unvalued.
Yeah.
Even leisure time is stratified. It forces us to ask, whose time are we managing? And for whose benefit? A just approach honors rest, slowness, dignity for everyone.
Such important points. So bringing it back to the personal level, what are some concrete, gentle tools we can use to cultivate a healthier relationship with time?
Our sources offer several good ones. Time journaling, tracking activities and how we felt during them.
Okay.
Energy mapping, identifying your peaks and dips and aligning tasks accordingly. The sacred no, learning to decline things that don't align with priorities or energy.
That's a hard one sometimes.
It is. We mentioned time-free work blocks, focusing on intention and flow, not the clock. And celebration rituals, weekly moments to acknowledge accomplishments and enjoyed moments, anchoring time to meaning.
It keeps coming back to relationship, not just output.
Exactly. These tools are about fostering a better, more mindful relationship, not just maximizing productivity.
It really sounds like the core theme is shifting from time as this scarce thing we fight to manage towards partnership.
Precisely. There's this beautiful idea from some indigenous traditions that time isn't just inert, it's alive. A conversation we're in.
Wow.
Time isn't just ticking, as one source says, it's talking. The invitation is to listen. What is time saying now? Time for action, rest, reflection, stillness.
Learning to tune in.
Yes. Partnering with time's flow, rather than fighting it, can lead to a much richer way of living.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive into something so basic yet so rarely considered deeply. Time as physics, as invention, as personal, emotional, societal.
And hopefully, it's given a deeper appreciation beyond just quick fix strategies. It's about your fundamental relationship with time.
So instead of leaving with the latest productivity app, we want to leave you, the listener, with maybe a more important question. Instead of how can I manage my time better, perhaps explore what kind of relationship do I want to have with time?
hmm Because ultimately, as the sources suggest, befriending time doesn't just create more space in our calendars.
It opens up more space for actual living.